these people have died not by ISIS. The vast majority, 95% of them, died by the Syrian regime. I think it's new. Obama had failed to support, stop the killing, and I think Trump's interest is really in the military complex. Really, violence never solved anything, and I think that we never really learned from our previous mistakes. If you recall the war on drugs, we're still fighting with that, and we're getting even worse and worse. And the same thing for war on terror or terrorism. Russia, United States, Britain, even sometimes France, all these people, how could they not be able to conquer such a small group of people? Well, I mean, obviously, we don't know yet. They have no idea what it is. But of course, it sounds fishy. Where the first federal Muslim judge is found floating on the river. But this is not the only time that we hear about crimes committed about Muslims in the country. There are a lot of crimes and hate crimes committed against American Muslims throughout the country. And unfortunately, most of the media does not cover it. Our mosques are being desecrated. Our women who wears the hijab, they identify with themselves as Muslims, are being harassed. The hijab is being pulled out. A guy attempted to burn a woman's hijab from the back of her back. People are told to go back to where they come from, although they were born right here in the United States of America. And this is not the America that I bought into. I've been in this country for 47 years. I have never seen it as bad as it is. And the hatred is not only towards Muslims. It's towards immigrants, towards minorities, towards women, towards Mexicans. And this gotta stop. This is not America that we should be proud of.
Do you think they were maybe trying to pass, maybe like we were saying with the Sharia law, and they were like, well, this is a judge, she may be able to influence some Sharia or something law being passed?
It's funny. It's funny you tell me that. Actually, by the way, the anti-Sharia law, when they changed it to anti-foreign law, it trapped with them the anti-halakha, which is the Jewish laws, and also the canon law, which affected some of the Catholics who use that. So a judge sitting on the bench does not use any other law but the American law. It has nothing to do with Islamic law. So she didn't go to a religious school. She went to a law school. She studied at, we have so many other judges who are Christian and Jews. Why don't we say their religion affects their behavior? Only about Muslims? This is kind of strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we gotta be cognizant about our shortcomings and how we sometimes unconsciously discriminate against others. All we need as American Muslim is to be treated like everybody else. Debated, but it's ironic that it's basically, if I have to summarize it in one sentence, it's a problem looking for this. It's a solution looking for a problem. Again, it's a solution to a no problem that doesn't exist. So this is the tactic that's being used by people who hate Islam and Muslims to create that hatred. And I say that how could 1% or less of the population who has no representation, except maybe for two congressmen, change the laws of the land? It doesn't make sense. The whole thing started about maybe 7-8 years ago. There's a lawyer who started creating a cookie cutter program. He went to the capitals of all the states from one state to another, mostly in the southern states, and he called it introduced a law called anti-Sharia law. It started in Oklahoma. And the premise of it is that Muslims are coming to the United States to destroy the Constitution and replace it with the Sharia. and if we don't like it, then they're gonna kill us and take over forcefully, which is really ludicrous, because it's like using irrational fear in the heart of the people who have nothing to do, no idea what Sharia is. So Sharia is basically Islamic law. And what is Islamic law? Islamic law is made of basically 2 or 3 components. Muslims observe the Quran, the holy book of Quran, that it has some of the teachings of how to do things, but that's not all of it. And there is something else called the Sunnah, or the examples of how Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had done things that we follow him. He told us how much to pray, or how to fast, all these things. And the last thing is by measure. So things that did not happen during the time of the Prophet, but now it's happening, we measure accordingly to it by using our scholar to figure out how we can respond to current events or current situations. So these 3 things are what is Sharia is, and it affects only Muslims. It does not affect anybody else who is not a Muslim, and actually it affects those who choose to use it. It doesn't it's not forced on anybody, even if they are Muslim. What does that affect me as an American Muslim? It affects me is that, I would learn how to pray in here, or if I wanted how to get married, I have a certain ways of getting married, like any other religious group. When I get buried, there's a certain way of being buried. I'd like to be buried. That's a Sharia. If I have a dispute with another Muslim, I wanted, for example, the Imam to justify or get in between us and solve the issues, that's a part of Sharia. These are issues have nothing to do with anybody else, for that matter. Actually, in reality, Muslims, by the Islamic law, by Sharia, is supposed to go and accept the laws of the land in which he lives in if it doesn't have a Muslim majority. As long as I'm not being forced to do something against my faith. In other words, if somebody tells me that you cannot pray, they cannot do that, I will not listen to it. But I have to obey the traffic laws, I have to obey the tax laws, I have to do everything that anybody else observe. So this irrational fear of being spewed by those Islamophobes is intentional. Whether they pass it or not is not the bottom line for them. The bottom line for them is to create that fear in the heart of those who have no knowledge of what Sharia is. And by doing this, they're creating, in addition to the fear, is the hate, and then eventually, not only hate translates into action that is affecting our children at school, the bullying that actually 30% of the bullying for our kids comes from teachers. Can you imagine that? So those who started this anti-Sharia propaganda in Oklahoma, when they were challenged by the Constitution, it turned out that it was unconstitutional and it was rejected. Oh, of course, because I know for a fact that he didn't do it for the sake of helping the Syrians. He doesn't give a hoot about if the Syrians live or die. And